You're listening to the Fusion Patrol Podcast.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Fusion Patrol. I'm Eugene.
And I'm Ben.
And tonight we're going to be looking at the next episode of the Starlost. This one entitled Mr. Smith of Manchester. So, interesting title, that episode. Mr. Smith of Manchester. Any idea why it's called that?
Well, if there was some kind of symbolic reason, I couldn't tell you, but the one thing that did really strike me, or that I learned as I watched it, is our chief antagonist is named Mr. Smith, and the biodome or biosphere is called Manchester.
Oh, is it called Manchester?
It is called Manchester.
I didn't catch him say that anywhere in the episode.
I did catch it, but it was only after I did a rewind at one point. It's said only once.
I have a feeling that there's something there that we're not getting, but I don't know, maybe Manchester is the home of weapons in Britain or something, but I don't know, it just seemed like...
It did seem like a very odd title.
Is Manchester an industrial city?
I wouldn't know.
Oh, it must be. It's up north, and everything up north is industrial, and either industrial or a port town. It's all blue collar and poor and violent, and so yeah, that must be what it is. It must be.
And we apologize to all those people who live in Manchester who are listening to this podcast. Please send your hate mail to...
Oh, come
Eugene.
on. Haven't you seen Life on Mars? That's up in Manchester. It's a pretty grim place. It's the north of England has some issues. Anyway, I'm sure there's some lovely people up there. That's not what I mean, but
One of my best friends, I think, lives, not...
Well, then he'll tell you.
Very north, but he does live a little north of London, if I remember right.
Well, you can live a long way north of London and still not be in the north. But anyway, so this episode, our friends, our heroes, if you will, I use that term.
Intrepid trio.
Our tepid trio.
Tepid trio. Ooh, that's good.
Oh, I like it. The tepid trio.
The tepid trio. I think we have a new name for them.
That beats up from the dynamic duo from Batman and Robin. The tepid trio. The tepid trio are in chains. They've got neck collars around them or neck chains and shackles, and they're being manhandled.
There's lots of bondage going on here.
There is, and they're just being... That's all. The start of the episode, we see this. We see what has to be the worst miniature...
It's dreadful.
...model I've ever seen. It's like styrofoam cups spray painted with silver paint, and then like fake smoke, and in one case a Bunsen burner.
Moving really fast.
Yeah, in one case a Bunsen burner sticking out of something that's supposed to be a smokestack.
A smokestack, exactly. It's the worst effect I've ever seen.
And a hideously polluted dome, but wherever they are, it's not hideously polluted, and they're in shackles. And they're brought before Mr. Smith, and they can't even say a word. They're captured, they're brought before this guy, he looks at him, and the first thing he says is like...
You're spies!
No, actually he says, yeah, I'll deal with you later. And then wanders off and asks questions about how did they get in. No, doesn't care who they are, doesn't care anything. He's more interested how they get in. And then, of course, he's made up his mind, as all despots do in these things. He's already got their whole story made up in his mind, what type of spy they are, what kind of military they are. And so, of course, nothing they say is treated as anything but an out-and-out lie. And then finally, after he's gone through all that, then they let them speak for a little bit, and Devon tells him his little tale, and he, of course, says it's a lie. And they're sent off for torture. Which is funny torture, because it's like electronic torture, and then
There's
afterwards...
some very pretty lights.
Yeah, and then afterwards, they make you forget the torture, and you feel rested, and you're all happy.
They feel rested, and...
It's as if they don't know they've been tortured. It's like, we're going to torture you, but afterwards you won't remember it, so it'll be okay.
Yeah, so there's post-hypnotic suggestion going on.
And then, and this is the other thing I just want to say, is that they under torture, they tell their same story. And, of course, they've got truth verifiers on them. And the truth verifiers tell that they've absolutely told the truth. So what does that mean? Obviously, they're
best,
even better than the machines.
Yes, they are the best programmed liars that Mr. Smith has ever encountered.
Which, of course, he's probably never encountered any, because they've never had any contact in his lifetime.
From any on the outside.
In ages.
Well, he tends to think that they're a fifth column group. He does say that at one point, that he believes that they're a fifth column group, probably within their own society.
I can't imagine why they need one of those. Well, basically, Manchester, the dome, is, we are told, well, okay, this story is really a bad story. I'm gonna put it on the line. It's not like bad like
Man from Atlantis.
Man from Atlantis bad, but it's bad because it's almost like a series of strung out vignettes that really don't logically lead from one to the next very much. It's very sort of I'm bumping around walls kind of story. And whereas there's a the plot.
There is no subplot.
The plot
Not
is
really.
The plot is kind of so low that I'm calling the actual plot a subplot, which is just Mr. Smith is nasty and wants to get out of the dome and wage war.
Wage war.
And he thinks that the people outside are trying to wage war on him. Anyhow, that's really the plot. Our heroes came in by mistake,
which I found fascinating.
Couldn't find a way back out.
Because he gives this big song and dance about how there is this elaborate security system which should prevent them from even popping in, yet here they are.
Mm-hmm.
So, and they really don't explain it that well, except that they found some hidden iris.
Yeah, and it wasn't hidden to them. They just walked through.
They just walked right to it. But
when it closed, it was imperceptible, and so they couldn't find their way back out. And then, they were immediately picked up by security and taken off, whatever, and chained up, because that's what the guards have chains hanging around all the time for. I don't know. It's kind of weird, but anyway. We're introduced to the culture of this dome, that Manchester was set up as a factory dome to produce small arms for the days when they would need small arms in the Ark in the future, when they land somewhere, I guess, so they can kill the native population.
Yeah.
Of course. Colonize this planet, shoot them dead. And then, if Mr. Smith is to be believed, he claims that's led to the Dome Wars, in which the other people began to get distrustful of Manchester, and so they decided that they were going to ban guns, and our people just wouldn't sit for that, and so they sealed us in, which kind of sounds a little like one man's distorted vision of or lie. That it sounds maybe like Manchester was the aggressor, but.
And they're being imprisoned for the safety of everybody else.
Right. You'd think they'd have just shut down the factories and destroyed the equipment rather than lock them in, but hey. So they're locked in. They can't get out. They don't know what's going on. They actually have technicians and whatnot, so Devin, of course, is eager to get them to help. But, of course, all he's interested in doing is getting out and waging war on somebody. I don't know if does he want to take over the Ark? Does he want to...
It's never really made clear.
Yeah, what would you want to do on the Ark if you were take control of the navigation system and fly it to where you want to go? I don't get it. And it's they just obviously needed, I think this is where the idea that you can just basically have any kind of civilization in these domes, and so we can explore any kind of story, does kind of fail apart, because no, you can't have quite anything in the domes, and this one seems kind of iffy.
Yeah, I kept thinking well, so many things we've said about in past Starlost episodes. I had a very hard time imagining that the society could have maintained the way that it has. It just did not seem believable to me.
Well, we got hundreds of years. They're building their factories are pumping out guns.
Yeah.
Where are these guns, and where are they getting the material?
I don't know.
You know, it doesn't feel like a you're right. It doesn't feel like a sustainable.
It doesn't feel like it's a sustainable society, as so many others that we've encountered already on this show.
It feels like that. You know, I can buy the premise that they might have factory domes, churning out equipment and material for the other domes. You know, that kind of might make sense. They need something. They have factories. They'll want to have factories capable when they arrive at the new location. I can all buy that. But just that, you know, for the last 5, 6, 800 years, this factory has been pumping out stuff. They've been meeting their quotas.
Where's it all going?
Where does it go? They just flush it into the recycler and make more stuff out of it later. It's not well thought out. It's just,
no.
You know, somebody said, hey, it can be anything, and just go. A lot of the story is really about, you know, the things that we do in the name of security. And there was a great line in there somewhere where it said, madness comes in the good cause of security, or something like that.
Right.
And another is like, we've lived in paranoid isolation in a fear of a war that will never come, all in the name of security.
All in the name of security, right.
It's as if they were channeling the spirit of the post 9/11 world.
Mm-hmm.
In a way. It's the closest thing this show's ever come to science fiction, and it's appallingly bad. Let's see, what else is there that we have? Oh yeah, they've got an inner and an outer city. The outer city is polluted, and
the inner city is not.
The inner city is not. That's like the Eloi and the Morlocks kind of thing. But the outer city, everyone's mutants. I think that was.
Well, we kind of get
the idea that the baby.
We get
was
that
a mutant.
idea. Rachel at one point, Rachel and Garth go into the outer city, and encounter this woman hiding in some shelter, but with the toxic air still coming in, and she's holding a crying baby, and we don't see the baby, but we see Rachel's face, and it's one of pure horror.
It could just be that the baby looked like Garth.
This is what our children would look like. Oh my God!
But anyway. And then they nearly die from it because the air is poisoned. But not before we get to see the man with the cart. Bring out your dead! Last run for the day!
Last call for the day! Bring out your dead! I was expecting to happen here. A gong. Bing!
And there's another one. So we've got this society. It's been running for 800 years. It's cranking out weapons like crazy, and filth and pollution and manufacturing, which of course all requires resources. You can't just burn that stuff up without resources. But the one resource that seems like it would be in short supply if they have a guy making multiple death trips every day would be people.
Yeah.
Surely they'd run out of people long before.
Now, how many people keep getting expelled? I mean, there's a little bit. There was a line that Smith has about maintaining the integrity of the society. So it sounds like that undesirables are continually being evicted. But even then,
they die.
Well, yeah, of course they die.
Because that's the
whole point.
People who live in the clean atmosphere, when they go out to the outer atmosphere, they die. It's only people who've apparently lived their whole lives in it that can continue on. But even then, I mean, what they would just have to be cranking them out, and I mean babies, like crazy, to have enough people to keep expelling them to go out to work in the factories.
Right. The math does not hold up on this.
No. But at least we get a bring out your dead guy, and he is in a monk's robe too, which is
well, there's a great bit where we should point out that there's a character that is introduced. It is Mr. Smith's aide. Her name is Trent. And at one point, we find out that she's been evicted to the outer city.
For helping Devon and them.
For helping, or at least she's accused of treason. And she's giving our tepid trio a warning about Mr. Smith and how not to help him. So our tepid trio run out, with masks this time. They find her. And the only thing that would have really made this work is if she had coughed out the words, "I'm not dead yet."
Because she was already on the cart. That's
right.
She was on the cart. And I'll tell you, here's the other thing that was kind of funny, and maybe this answers our question. She's not dead. She's on the cart. Of course, she is going to die. She does die, but she is going to die. And they like, hey, they start to take her, and the guy's like, you can't do that. Like, why not?
Yeah.
Well, and she's not dead. Why not?
Why not take her?
Why not let him take her? And then he also says, what do you want her for? As if he's getting money
out of this,
or perhaps resources.
Yeah, but she's a form of currency to him,
or food, or who knows what. But fodder for the factories. I don't know, but yeah, he seemed awfully upset. In fact, they had to kind of fight him off. But he also, in addition to his bring out the deadline, when they bump into him at one point, he actually gets a line of dialogue. It's like, you got any dead for me?
Yeah.
It was
it was the highlight of the episode.
It was the highlight of the episode. That was pretty. Oh, actually, no, the highlight of the episode was so Devon and Garth and Rachel have decided that they've got to escape and not let Mr. Smith find the way out, because he really wants to know how to get out, because he's going to apparently kill everyone in the Ark by dumping the pollution out there, and that'll kill them, and then they can, I don't know what, but get rid of their enemies.
Oh, it's another one of those unbelievable megalomaniacs.
And so they're down in their factory where they've got their warehouse. They've got tanks. They've got crates and crates of explosives and semi-automatic weapons. And somehow that's where Rachel and Devon and Garth, the tepid trio, think that the Iris is. And the part that is strange to me is that they didn't know they had a warehouse full of weapons. But if that's the Iris they came in, then they would have come right into the warehouse full of weapons. So that should have been the first thing they learned about this place.
But then again, earlier in the episode, Garth and Rachel, before they go out into the door that says exit forbidden, they go right through there, and you see, and again, this brings this whole situation into question. Garth and Rachel are reacting to, oh my gosh, look at all this weaponry, look at all these tanks, for a mile that you as far as you can see. It's the first time they've ever noticed it. Were they already in bondage when they came through? Or was there another Iris that they were able to come through? It's the only thing I can figure.
But there's more than one Iris that they could get. Maybe that's it. But they didn't know. But anyway, my thought the highlight was, so they're stacked up there on Mr. Smith's hiding over on one side of the warehouse, and he's got armed guards to the teeth. The tepid trio are over on the other side with the dying Trent. And they're crouched down, and Devon's trying to get Mr. Smith to come out. And Smith's new assistant, which is another woman, a vacuous-looking woman, I have to say, she says something like, it should be okay because they couldn't possibly be armed. And I screamed at the TV. It's like, you're in a warehouse full of weapons, you stupid people. And the only good thing about the episode is that Smith says, we're in a warehouse full of weapons. You really are a dumb bunny, aren't you? Well, at least the writer was...
And there was some sort of consistency there.
Like, well, at least somebody's finally got a clue in this episode, because the rest of it was really largely clueless. So Devin, I don't know, lets in some air from the outside, the outer dome, and he's got all the masks, and so the guards have to run away or they'll all die. And then he puts the key in the lock, and they leave through the door. And with the final words, "When we learn how to control that madman, we'll come back."
Well, and not before, though, Mr. Smith yelling at them as he's forced to run away, "You haven't seen the last of me."
I'm wishing, I hope we have seen the last of him, frankly, because he's not a good character. But I can see how, now that he knows there's an iris that works in that room, he's going to go over it again and again and again until they actually find it. So they may very well escape.
Unless he had already left that room, so he didn't see the iris.
No, he didn't see the iris, but if they leave the room, then he knows there has to be a way out in that room. I mean, that's presumably where they came in, and that's where they disappear. He doesn't know how they get in and out, but he knows there's an exit there.
Yeah, and but will he be able to actually trigger it?
They got hundreds of years. They've got... That's a lot better than having to search the entire dome for secret passages. They've got just one room, and they can... Well,
there was something earlier that is said when Devin questions him and said, "Well, with all your weaponry, how come you just didn't blow your way out?" And he says, "The alloy, it's the toughest alloy that we know of. If we were to try and use our weaponry to blow those doors off, we'd end up blowing the roof off the biosphere instead."
Right. Yeah, he did say that, and I think they'd make the dome out of that alloy too. But anyway, I'd want my roof to be nice and stable. But anyhow,
I definitely want the roof to be just a bit more stable than maybe the inner doors.
Yeah, that seems likely, but yeah. So but that doesn't mean he won't keep searching for it. And let's face it, the excuse at the end as to why they couldn't get out. It's like Garth finds the control. Devin puts the key in it. The door opens up. They leave.
After Devin already gave a lecture saying, "No, that can't be it."
Yeah, he did earlier. He says, "Yeah, that one can't be it." But then later on he says, "Yeah, what the heck? I got the key. Let's give it a try."
Doesn't hurt.
Doesn't hurt. And it opens and they leave. And they say, "Well, why didn't Mr. Smith leave then?" And Devin's answer is, "Maybe he hasn't got a key."
Yeah, didn't have a key. You think?
If that's all that's stopping them from getting out the door, because let's face it, haven't we seen Garth stick a crossbow bolt in one of the card slot readers, and that causes the door to open up?
Yeah.
Yes, we have. And by the way, Garth loses his crossbow.
Yes, I've noticed.
Mr.
He may
Smith
have to,
took it at the beginning.
I don't know if we ever see another one. I don't know if we see the crossbow again.
Of course
in the remainder of the series. I mean, we must. The only thing that I can also say is the computer terminal that our Trio, or most specifically Gar or Devin, because he seems to be the keeper of the key, that seems to be the only one they've ever found in Manchester. They didn't see any others. So if that's the only one, and if it's kind of hidden, and if Mr. Smith has no idea what the hell it is...
There's one on the computer desk of the aide de camp's, the Dumb Bunny's desk.
Oh.
There was a standard domed computer thing on there. So I didn't notice any others around the dome.
At least none that control
doors. But I really
doors.
wasn't looking, I was... Because that's just set dressing. It's like I was noticing the green foam, which was in great abundance in this particular episode. But it was, So a cautionary tale about the dangers of security, paranoia, and pollution, I guess, sort of, maybe, and
industrial danger of industry that goes unchecked. Well, it sounds like Doomwatch.
And. Starred Ed Ames, the famous Ed Ames, as Mr. Smith. Actually, this kind of reminded me of episodes of UFO, because you'd see a guest star wearing an outrageously awful wig to make them look modern. And maybe that was Ed Ames' real hair.
That was his real hair.
At that time, he was wearing that stupid hair, 70s
That was his
haircut.
real hair.
Going into the 70s like that, I know a lot of people wore their hair that way, but when you pass 25 to 30, you need to stop.
Yeah.
And he was, what, 60?
The episode, well, he was born in 1927.
And that was episode
So
73.
do the math, that was 73.
So, almost 50.
Yeah, almost 50 years old.
Almost 50. And he didn't use a hatchet in this episode at all.
No.
Which is the best thing Ed Ames ever did. Have you ever seen that?
Yes, I have.
Yes, you have. The hatchet on the Tonight Show.
The hatchet on the Tonight Show. I didn't know you were Jewish.
Yes. That was a classic. That was much better than this episode. So if you're going to seek it out, look for Ed Ames' Tonight Show.
Yeah, it produced what is regarded as probably the longest laugh in Tonight Show history.
It was, it was funny. I'm still laughing about it now. Like that, perhaps a bit. Not, another episode where we get nowhere. We actually find somebody who could help, but now they won't help.
Well, in the overall scheme of things, yes.
They didn't fix anything?
It was, I know, you could almost say, here we are, it's status quo again. The only thing that we've got that's changed it is we now have this character who has threatened to make a reappearance, and that our Tepa trio want to try and contain at some point in the future. So we have this presence now that we are supposed to be aware of. But other than that, this episode changes nothing.
This episode changes nothing inside the Manchester Dome either.
No, there's no change at all.
I mean, and typically, our heroes do something.
Right. These kinds of stories I find very offensive to me because they didn't act. All they did was react to the situation.
Like I said, they just kind of bump around from walls in this one. This was really... Devin gets to do a little bit of his angry Devin acting from time to time.
Oh, the interrogation bit I thought was hysterical. When they're hooked up to the truth machine.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
The acting, the pained seizures that they were having, I thought was great.
Until they snapped them back on and they were all happy and refreshed and had a nice day. I mean, everyone should have some torture then.
Yeah.
Funny that they're really calling the doors irises a lot in this episode.
Yes, I noticed.
In fact, it was so prominent. There's even one line where Devin or Garth says, we just came through an iris or a door or whatever you call it.
That. Yeah, whatever you
call it. I was like, don't you guys normally call them doors? I mean, I thought the only ones they ever called irises were the ones that opened kind of irisy.
Like on a camera lens or something. Yeah.
But the Manchester door just raised up.
It just goes up and then closes. And we don't even know anything about the door that they've stumbled through in the first place.
No, we just went through an iris and there we were. Woohoo!
Yeah.
It's a very, very little redeeming in this episode. Really doesn't bring anything. It does actually bring something to the table, I should say. Let's talk a little bit about the Dome Wars.
Yes, this is the second time we've heard about the Dome Wars now.
And this time I think do you feel that we were given the cause for the Dome Wars, or this was incidental and manifested itself along with the Dome Wars?
I'm not entirely certain about that. I honestly don't know.
Mr. Smith is putting the whole thing off onto, we're persecuted because they were infringing upon us. And, I'm perfectly willing to believe that that's all BS. That's, him either repeating the party line or him telling them, his candy-coated version of it so that they are sympathetic to their plight. These poor trapped people. I don't know. That's really all we get, except that apparently the Dome Wars did come to an end.
Yeah.
And these guys got sealed in.
It would be interesting to put the Dome Wars in some sort of historical context regarding the Ark, the disaster, or the accident.
Yeah, did it happen before or after the disaster? Did the Dome Wars cause the disaster?
Yeah. It'd be nice to put it in some sort of historical context with that.
Did the disaster cause the Dome Wars?
Who knows? I kind of get the feeling that had the series been allowed to continue, that maybe we would have found out. Maybe this is one of those things that Harlan did come up with that was supposed to continue on or become a major point.
Or by this point, he was so long gone that this was just somebody left over and said, yeah, we'll just mention the Dome Wars. I don't know. It was bad. I will say, I don't have anything else to say about this thing. I think we've twisted this one far beyond. It's not good enough to like. It's not bad enough to go on about like C.W. Hyde. It's just.
And oddly enough, I didn't hate this episode, but I think that's because I still have so much Man from Atlantis on the brain that I was able to watch this and think, this really isn't that terrible.
It could be.
It could have been a lot better had it
made
been
sense.
Given. I think that I think this story had potential, but it just so missed the mark on so many different levels.
Yeah. So then, avoid this episode, but don't avoid
like so many others.
But don't avoid it like the plague. It's just.
I mean, don't go rushing out to see it. But if it happens to be on while you're watching,
if you wanted to take the episode of the Starlost to turn somebody onto it and say, yeah, you want to watch Starlost,
this isn't it.
This isn't it.
No.
I don't know what is.
I don't think there is an episode for that.
But there's still a few to come up, and I think the one with the giant bees really is.
Ooh, I can't wait.
I haven't seen that one. I haven't actually sat through all the Starlost yet. I started it when I got the DVD set, and then I stopped when we started doing the podcast, and I'm going back. So we're actually just about up to the point now where I haven't seen the episodes once previously. So it'll be totally new. So what I wanted to say, and I don't have the information at the tip of my fingers, is J. Michael Straczynski. I'll blame it on him, and that'll help you guys track it down. Tweeted, so you can look Straczynski Twitter, and you can look through his stuff, and you'll see that he tweeted a link to a collection recently published of Harlan Ellison's stories.
Yes.
And the pilot,
I actually got an email for that. It's a collection of his works that have been published into a book.
3 books.
Yeah.
And one of them contains the pilot for the Starlost.
Oh, does it?
Yes.
I didn't know that.
I think it's volume 2, which is why I bring this up. It has the award-winning the Emmy award-winning version is in that book. So if you're interested in it, there are some special editions. I don't think they're like Amazonable. I think you had to get them through this special Harlan Ellison website or something.
He deals with a specific publishing company.
But you'd think their publishing company would want Amazon to sell them so that they can get them in front of more people.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. I don't know. Maybe it is available on Amazon. I didn't look, but the link went to this particular website, and so if you're interested, you can look out and find it and read some of Harlan Ellison's award-winning work, including the original pilot, Phoenix Without Ashes, of the Starlost. But do not watch Mr. Smith of Manchester if you wish to see high-quality Starlost action, unless you're just a fan of green foam.
Yeah.
And styrofoam cups made to look like well, styrofoam cups painted silver. All right. Well, I think we're going to just leave it at that and say, if
another loser.
If you've spent 35 minutes listening to us talk about this episode, that's more time than you need to give thought to this episode of
That's
Starlost.
It was the easiest episode for me to watch, oddly enough, because all I had to do was just watch right through it, and there were very little notes that I needed to take on it because there was just not much worth commenting about.
Yeah. So, until next time, when I hope you'll join us again, we'll say, I hope you join us again on Fusion Patrol.
Cheers.
You've been listening to the Fusion Patrol Podcast, a production of Lone Locust Productions. Join us on our new discussion forums at fusionpatrol.com. Find us on Facebook or follow us on Twitter, username Fusion Patrol. You can also send us feedback by email at feedback@fusionpatrol.com. If you'd like to support Fusion Patrol, please leave us a review on iTunes. Fusion Patrol's theme music is Fight the Future by Amberwolf.